I'm not trying to make us back together in any way, Meri.
We are never, ever, ever getting back together.
Kody and Meri's unraveling has reached a point where it's no longer just reality TV drama. It's a case study in denial, manipulation, and the refusal to let go of a crumbling narrative. At the center of it all stands Meri, who with sharp finality declared that the relationship is done, finished, and beyond repair. Her words were not just a breakup announcement, they were a closing argument, a final verdict. And in that moment, it felt as if Taylor Swift's "We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together" had been ripped straight from the radio and replayed in real life, with Meri as the lead vocalist and Kody stuck in the audience, powerless to rewrite the lyrics. But while Meri's clarity was refreshing, Kody's reaction was the opposite. A man cut loose from his lifeline, stumbling, searching for excuses, and rehearsing apologies that seemed as hollow as an empty stage. He spoke of love in the past tense, yet wrapped it with artificial sweetness, as if hoping that some audience somewhere might still buy into the act. To those watching, it felt less like heartfelt regret and more like a desperate save-face season, a last-ditch effort to maintain control of the story through manufactured drama. And when control starts slipping, men like Kody don't fade gracefully. They double down. The timeline of this fracture is telling. At first, there were whispers of disconnection, silent dinners, side glances that spoke louder than words, and long absences disguised as needing space. Slowly, the distance stretched, until the emotional chasm became impossible to cross. Meri, for years caught in a cycle of gaslighting and emotional neglect, began to find her voice. That voice hardened into steel, sharpened with words that carried the weight of betrayal and broken trust. Kody, on the other hand, responded not with accountability, but with performance, grand gestures of apology that sounded more like PR statements than genuine confessions. Observers couldn't ignore the patterns, the half-smiles masking arrogance, the carefully staged moments of vulnerability, the sudden surges of emotion only when cameras rolled. This wasn't just a breakup, it was theater, where Kody played the misunderstood martyr while Meri, finally, stepped into the role of truth-teller. His forgiveness tours weren't about love, they were about optics. Every delayed declaration of "I loved you, I still love you" landed not as romance, but as manipulation, as if to suggest Meri owed him one more chance. But by then, her resolve was ironclad. She wasn't returning to the carousel of promises and disappointments. And this is where the story morphs from personal heartbreak into cultural commentary. Viewers aren't simply watching a failed marriage. They are watching the anatomy of control, the mechanics of gaslighting, and the tactics of a man desperate to protect an image rather than confront his reality. Kody's apologies arrive late, his love speeches are timed for dramatic effect, and his sudden awareness of Meri's worth feels less like revelation and more like desperation. In storytelling terms, this is the climax of a long-simmering plotline, where the mask slips and the real character steps into view. The deeper one dives into this saga, the more it becomes clear that this isn't just about love lost. It's about a system of power, emotional, psychological, even reputational. Kody thrived on control, and when that control fractured, he turned to spectacle. His efforts to rewrite history in real time are as transparent as glass, yet he clings to them because the alternative, accepting responsibility, would dismantle the persona he's built. Meri, on the other hand, embodies a different archetype, the survivor who refuses to let manipulation dictate the rest of her story. The dramatic tension lies here, in the collision between performance and authenticity, between the need to save face and the hunger for liberation. Meri has ripped away the curtain, exposing the props, the rehearsed lines, the false apologies. And in that exposure, Kody looks less like a partner and more like a character trapped in his own delusion, a man rehearsing "I'm sorry" on loop, while the world has already moved on. The public reaction mirrors this divide. Some viewers feel sympathy for Kody, interpreting his stammered apologies as proof of lingering love. Others see through the veneer, recognizing the patterns of manipulation, the cycles of neglect followed by sudden waves of performative affection. The consensus, however, leans toward Meri. Her refusal to play along, her declaration that this chapter is closed, resonates with anyone who has ever endured a toxic cycle and finally found the strength to break free. And yet, despite the clarity of the ending, Kody continues to stage his encore. His lifeline has been severed, but he grips the rope anyway, dangling in a void of his own making. Every interview, every teary-eyed confession, every late love statement feels like another act in a tragic play where the audience already knows the ending. The irony is brutal. Meri's voice, once drowned out by years of dismissal, now carries the authority of finality. Kody's voice, once dominant, now rings hollow. What remains is not reconciliation, but revelation, that sometimes the most powerful act of love is walking away, refusing to be drawn back into a cycle of gaslighting and half-truths. The story moves forward, the drama intensifies, and as viewers, we're left to dissect not just the collapse of a relationship, but the anatomy of power, pride, and manipulation. Kody's save face season is in full swing, but Meri has already closed the book, and in that gap between his illusion and her reality lies the true heart of this saga, a battle not of love, but of truth. The Brown family has become less about polygamy and more about the contradictions, hypocrisy, and raw power plays that keep viewers both horrified and hooked. At the center of this firestorm is Robyn, whose carefully polished image of fairness has begun to unravel under the weight of her choices. She speaks the language of equality, insisting that all wives deserve fairness, but lives in a sprawling mansion that towers like a monument to excess, while the other wives struggle financially. It is a stark contrast, a cruel irony that exposes the hollow nature of her so-called principles. When she cries for fairness, the subtext is not about shared sacrifice, but about maintaining her dominance. The mansion itself becomes symbolic, a fortress of privilege constructed on the foundation of others' compromises. The cracks in this facade widened further when the issue of Coyote Pass land emerged. The land was supposed to be a family dream, a shared legacy where everyone would build their future together. Instead, it has turned into a battlefield, with Robyn taking a hardline stance, gripping her stake in the property like a weapon. Her language is dressed in the rhetoric of responsibility, but the reality is one of possession and exclusion. She speaks of fairness, but what she practices is territorial control. Each decision, each refusal to compromise, underscores the fact that her vision of fairness is a mirror that reflects only her own benefit. It is not about building a family community. It is about consolidating her influence, ensuring that her position remains untouchable even as the larger family fractures. The drama around Coyote Pass is not just about land. It is about power, manipulation, and the subtle art of gaslighting. Robyn positions herself as the reasonable one, while in truth, she plays the long game of dominance. As if the suffocating atmosphere of these internal battles weren't enough, a bizarre subplot has emerged with Kody himself, hinting that he is receiving emails from women eager to join the family. The claim itself sounds almost satirical. Who, in their right mind, would willingly walk into a household drowning in tension, betrayals, and endless rivalries? The very suggestion reeks of delusion or calculated deflection. Kody presents this as proof of his enduring charisma, as though he is still a desirable patriarch presiding over an empire of eager followers. In reality, it reads like another desperate attempt to save face, to pretend that his world isn't collapsing around him. The notion of new wives volunteering to enter this chaos feels like dark comedy, a cruel punchline in a family already drowning in dysfunction. It is a reminder that sometimes denial doesn't just blind, it entertains with its absurdity. And then there is the manufactured drama. the spectacle that reveals the fingerprints of producers trying to squeeze every drop of tension out of a tired narrative. The most glaring example is the absurd rivalry staged between Kody and Christine's new husband, David. Instead of focusing on the genuine emotional fallout of Christine's liberation from years of neglect, the cameras zero in on trivial competitions, like racing expensive Porsche cars, as though masculinity could be measured in horsepower. The scene is laughably artificial, an overproduced attempt to spark rivalry where none truly exists. The reality is far more human. Christine has moved on, found real happiness, and Kody is left choking on the dust of his own ego. Yet the producers, desperate for ratings, stage these contests as though the story were about Porsche engines instead of the collapse of trust, the betrayal of sisterhood, and the hypocrisy of a man who lost control of the narrative. These threads, Robyn's hypocrisy, Kody's delusions of desirability, and the producer's synthetic tension, intertwine into a timeline that escalates from quiet fractures to full-blown implosion. It starts with Robyn's quiet but insistent control over finances and land, the subtle exertion of dominance disguised as fairness. It builds with Kody's desperate grasping at relevance, flaunting phantom emails as proof that women still covet his chaos, and it climaxes in the grotesque theater of staged masculinity contests, where luxury cars become props in a farce that reveals the bankruptcy of authenticity. Each step exposes not just the downfall of a family, but the anatomy of manipulation and spectacle. The emotional toll on the other wives is palpable. While Robyn nestles in her mansion, Christine, Janelle, and Meri are left to confront financial strains, emotional neglect, and the gaslighting that has defined much of their shared history. Viewers watch as these women claw back their agency, refusing to be pawns in Robyn and Kody's power games. Christine's departure, in particular, sends shockwaves, because it punctures the illusion that Kody's control is unbreakable. Robyn's cries for fairness ring emptier than ever, because fairness without sacrifice is just propaganda. In the broader cultural context, the Browns' unraveling shines a spotlight on how control and manipulation operate in family systems. Robyn's rhetoric, Kody's delusions, and the producer's manufactured drama reflect patterns that extend far beyond television. This is about gaslighting dressed up as love, control disguised as fairness, and exploitation masquerading as entertainment. The Browns' story becomes a cautionary tale, a mirror held up to any relationship where power eclipses partnership. As the dust settles, the audience is left not with clarity, but with questions. Questions about fairness, loyalty, and the lengths people will go to protect their image while destroying their relationships. Robyn's dual face, Kody's phantom admirers, and the producer's staged rivalries create a tapestry of betrayal and spectacle that demands reflection. When the credits roll, what lingers is not the image of luxury cars or grand mansions, but the unsettling realization that behind the smiles and scripted lines lies a world built on manipulation, hypocrisy, and the relentless hunger for control. The collapse of the Brown family empire has turned into a carnival of absurdities, and at the center of it all is Kody, once the self-proclaimed patriarchal king, now reduced to a parody of himself. His physical appearance, once crafted to project confidence and authority, has become a subject of mockery. Viewers can't help but notice the strange choices in his grooming and style. The wild, untamed curls that look less like charisma and more like chaos, the oddly sculpted beard that many have dubbed the Amish-like goatee, a style where the chin hair flourishes while the mustache is conspicuously absent. Instead of evoking strength or wisdom, it reads like a caricature, a costume piece in a play that has already lost its audience. His fashion, too, amplifies the absurdity. Loud jackets, awkwardly chosen accessories, and a general refusal to accept that time has passed make Kody appear less like a leader and more like a man desperately clinging to a fading spotlight. The mockery isn't just about vanity. It symbolizes the erosion of his credibility. His style mirrors his leadership, confused, outdated, and embarrassingly unaware of how others perceive him. If Kody's appearance has become comedic, Robyn's emotional strategy has entered a different stage. For years, she weaponized her tears, flooding every conversation with sobs that blurred reality and guilt-tripped the other wives into silence. Tears were her currency, her power move. But now, with the other wives gone, the theatrics have all but dried up. The endless crying scenes, once a staple of the show, have disappeared because there is no audience left to manipulate within the family itself. Robyn doesn't need to convince Christine, Janelle, or Meri anymore. They've escaped the gravitational pull of Kody's gaslighting. Now her mission is singular: hold onto power. Without the other wives, Robyn has transformed from the tear-streaked victim into the calculating gatekeeper of whatever remains. The absence of her performative crying isn't growth, it's a strategic shift. She doesn't need crocodile tears anymore when control is already in her hands. In this silence, her true ambition becomes clearer than ever: survival, dominance, and the preservation of her throne at Kody's side, even if the kingdom around them has burned to ashes. And that brings us to the bigger picture. The family itself is finished. What once sold itself as a radical vision of plural love has dissolved into fragments of betrayal, manipulation, and humiliation. The show, once marketed as a raw glimpse into the complexities of plural marriage, has devolved into something akin to Sharknado, so catastrophically bad that it has become entertainment by accident. The relationships are shattered beyond repair. Reconciliation is a fantasy no one believes anymore. Each former wife has chosen her own path, seeking healing outside the suffocating ecosystem of Kody and Robyn's control. What remains on screen is not a family but a production, stitched together with contrived drama, producer-crafted tension, and hollow storylines designed to keep viewers from looking away. The real story, the end of the Browns as a functional unit, has already been told. What lingers is the grotesque afterlife, where producers serve up artificial drama like reheated leftovers, hoping the audience is too mesmerized by the spectacle to notice there is no substance left. The timeline of this decline is telling. It began with subtle cracks: Kody's arrogance in decision-making, Robyn's tears conveniently timed to manipulate outcomes, and the other wives beginning to question whether their sacrifices were worth the emptiness they were left with. From there, the fractures widened: financial inequality, emotional neglect, and constant gaslighting turned doubts into resentment. Christine was the first to break free, shattering the illusion that Kody's grip was unshakable. Janelle followed, tired of living in a perpetual state of compromise. Meri, long subjected to humiliation, finally conceded that there was no love left to salvage. Each departure was a small implosion, and together they became the climax. The family collapsed not with a single explosion, but with a series of controlled demolitions. Robyn and Kody were left standing in the ruins, insisting there was still a kingdom, when all that remained was rubble. And in this rubble, Kody's appearance becomes almost symbolic. His ridiculous hair, his outdated goatee, his flamboyant but clueless fashion sense. They are metaphors for a man who refuses to accept that the world has moved on. He is trapped in his own delusion, dressing like a patriarchal hero in a story that no longer exists. Robyn, stripped of her tears, now rules over nothing but ashes, clutching power in a kingdom that no longer has subjects. Together they stand as tragicomic figures, the parody of a king and the silent queen, both desperate to hold onto a legacy that the rest of the world has already abandoned. Yet despite this collapse, the cameras keep rolling. The show trudges forward, dragging its own corpse behind it, surviving not on authentic storytelling, but on spectacle. The producers know the family is finished, but they also know that viewers can't look away. It's a car crash of a narrative, so ugly, so fractured, so shamelessly fake, that it demands attention. Every episode now feels like a parody of itself, with Kody's absurd styling, Robyn's silent maneuvering, and the ghost of a family that once pretended to be united. The Browns are no longer pioneers of plural love. They are relics of a failed experiment, kept alive only because disaster, when televised, becomes addictive. The collapse of the Browns is more than entertainment. It's a cautionary tale about control, manipulation, and the cost of image-making. The family's implosion exposes the machinery of gaslighting and hypocrisy, wrapped in a bow of cheap production tricks. What was once a show about unity has become a lesson in disunity, and what was once a story about family has become a satire of power. Viewers are left not with admiration, but with discomfort, watching a man mocked for his vanity, a woman stripped of her performative tears, and a family hollowed out by its own contradictions. And yet, in this grotesque theater, the spectacle continues, daring us to keep watching, even when there is nothing left to save.